Since Black people have been forcefully and violently brought over to this land, we have been truly doing the best with what we've got. And I found this really great article on NoBasicGirlsAllowed.com about revisiting the cottagecore trend through the lens of Black American heritage, published on September 30th, 2020. And I was like, oh, yes, this is the conversation I want to have, because films like The Color Purple and Sounder and women like Minnie Riperton are not often in our conversations, right? They're not often referenced in our conversations about Black women in the cottagecore aesthetic and representation. I do understand that although Black women haven't been the face of the, cottagecore aesthetic, the revival of the cottagecore aesthetic, we have been there. And what's so interesting is that although the cottagecore aesthetic, because remember, it's an aesthetic, it's not a movement, right? It's a aesthetic that, yes, has some political critique, but there is not a cottagecore movement. People are not creating, entire philosophies off of this. Not saying that's a bad or good thing, just saying that it's not a movement. It's an aesthetic. But when we talk about it, we're discussing it as if the Black women who are now participating in it are a new face, are new representation to it, and there's nothing previously. There was nothing happening before, which is not true. We have films like The Color Purple. We have films like Sonder. We have women like Minnie Riperton that represent what I really think is the cottagecore aesthetic in true versus what's happening now. Because although the cottagecore aesthetic is supposed to be, right, this aesthetic that has a political critique or undertones of, slow living off the land, farming, being self-sustainable, or creating communities that are self-sustainable, right? Honoring the earth and taking care of it and giving back to it and truly living off the land. The aesthetic, although focusing on that, still plays into the same capitalistic and materialistic foundations of this culture in America. And you go on TikTok and you look for cottagecore aesthetics, you're still finding people doing hauls of fast fashion retailers who are selling this clothing, right? So it's like, are we really going to stay true to this or not? But revisiting the cottagecore trend through the lens of Black American culture is a really, really, really beautifully written article that I want to share with you all. It was written by Michelle Wright. She's a contributor to NoBasicGirlsAllowed.com, and she wrote something extremely beautiful. Because let's be honest, Black people, although it may feel that we are left out of things, we are never absent from them, right? And I want to say that again. Although it may feel that we are left out of things, we are never absent from them. So although it feels like Black women are just beginning to participate in the cottagecore lifestyle, it is not new to us. Dressing in that way, living in that way, running through the fields of lilies and sunflowers is not new to us. We have been doing that. And we haven't been doing that only when we were brought over to this land forcefully and violently. We were doing it on our own land. We have always lived in this way, right? There are those of us who have always had this cottagecore aesthetic experience of life without the violence and the trauma, okay, of, America. So let's get into reading and responding to this beautifully, beautifully, beautifully written article by Michelle Wright on NoBasicGirlsAllowed.com. Revisiting the cottagecore trend through the lens of Black American heritage. Naturally, we as humans are drawn to the environment we lay home to. And from it, we have birthed ideas that support our existences in the same way that the earth has birthed us. As humans, we have cultivated a symbiotic tie to the land through the communities we have built. This year's emerging aesthetic, cottagecore, is an attempt to call on this importance of our ties to the world around us in both a visually alluring and physically endearing way. And I think making that emphasis on visually alluring is important because if you think about the film The Color Purple, it is a very visually pleasing film, but what happens in these beautiful landscapes and these gorgeous homes, what happens on this, right, plentiful, bountiful, beautiful land are very harmful things, right? Very violent things, very troubling, traumatizing things are happening. So it may be aesthetically pleasing to look at, but it isn't alluring, right? You don't want to live like that. You don't want to experience the things that many of the women in The Color Purple are experiencing. Yet, that whole entire film is the cottagecore aesthetic, from the house to the clothing, even down to the little straw hat y'all love to wear and the aesthetic. Everything about The Color Purple as a film, an aesthetic, is cottagecore, yet we're not talking about it as such. In essence, cottagecore is an idyllic interpretation of pastoral life. It is lace dresses that spill off of forms and the corset-clad bodices. It is in the faces that remain soft and ethereal amidst foraging and farming. It is the quaint cottage home and domesticity. This aesthetic has appealed to many on various social media platforms, sparking a community of individuals who now hope to have the ability to maintain the land around them, looking and feeling beautiful whilst doing so. The aesthetic, although promoting itself as largely wholesome, has not been void of its well-deserved criticism. A large issue has been found in the disregard for environmental interconnectedness. An alarming appeal has been made in the ability to own land in very exploitive and self-serving means. This encourages practices that actively damages the environment itself and harms those who are disadvantaged from being able to access inherent necessities such as shelter, food, and water. You know, Black farmers, 90% of Black farmers have had their land stolen between 1903 and 1997. They'll tell you that they've had their land lost, or 90% of Black farmers have lost their land through vicious tactics such as loans from the bank that have outrageous stipulations that of course people cannot keep up with, which then in turn means they have to lose their land. But it was stolen, right? If you think about the position of Black people from 1903 to 1997, the things we were signing may not have been understood in full, therein resulting to the loss of farmland of 90% of Black farmers, right? So when we think about this beautiful aesthetic and living off the land and having this pastoral life, you know, how did that come to be for a lot of those living here in the Americas? The aesthetic has also garnered an attraction from white people who believe that they are better than others. You know the word I'm trying to use, not going to say it. We, need our coins. From white people who think they are better than others, who have found refuge in the selfish ownership of land that mirrors colonialism. They have actively utilized cottagecore as a medium in which to express their own interpretation of a return to traditional values. At first glance, since traditional values make up the bulk of cottagecore, it can be hard to realize the innocent from the malevolent. There has been an attempt to derail further white people who think they're better involvement by other members of the aesthetics community by flagging those people's content and the ways in which they express both subtle and blatant forms of not liking people who aren't the same color as them. Y'all know what I'm saying. The prevalence of not liking people because they're not the same color as you in such a space is important because it ignores how Black Americans have both contributed to the development of agriculture and have created their own aestheticization of the lifestyle as well. Artistic works such as Julie Dash's Daughter of the Dust and Beyonce's visual album Lemonade are hallmark examples. Both films pay homage to Black heritage in America and the vitality of the community throughout the oppression. Daughters of the Dust is an independent film from the late 1990s that centralizes its story on the Gullah, a group of Black Americans who have retained most of the culture from Africa, located on the Sea Islands of South Carolina, where it's my family. family. Woo, woo, woo. Throughout the film are scenes of communal meals of okra. I love me some okra, y'all. Some fried okra. Some fried green tomatoes. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Eat like your ancestors. Throughout the film are scenes of communal meals of okra and seafood, lush greenery, and charming beaches, and southern antebellum dresses that could be taken straight out of a mood board. Beyonce's visual album directly references Dash's film and simultaneously creates its own distinctive narrative on the same basis of Black pastoralism. And the poetic sequences before and during each song lies in its own moments of heartfelt connection between people and between the earth and one's identity. So let's take a pause. Like I said, although it feels like we are often left out of things, we are never absent from them. In the land of the Americas, Black people are responsible, just as responsible, yes, I will say it, just as responsible as the natives of the land of the Americas to contributing to agricultural advancements. When it comes to farming, when it comes to much of what we understand of how to eat, how to grow, how to cultivate this land, it is in thanks to the Africans forcefully and violently brought over here and the native people of this land. Because without that knowledge, baby, I don't know what we'll be eating. I don't know what we'll be eating. Actually, we'd be fine because we Black. But, I don't know what everybody else will be eating. So we've always lived this lifestyle. Cottagecore is not new to us. It's true to us. It's just that the way that it's being represented now, right, seems like it's new to us. So a similar interpretation can be found in soul singer Minnie Riperton, with her fittingly titled compositions such as Come to My Garden, Overalls, and Baby's Breath Hairstyle, a hairstyle also shared by Donna Summers. Riperton has provided another source of inspiration that shows the range and the Black rendition of the aesthetic, from the simplistic to the elaborate. A key difference between representations of Black pastoralism and cottagecore is the acknowledgement of both the colonial history and the enslavement of Black people that is relayed in Lemonade's Freedom and the followings of the Gullah struggles and Daughters of the Dust. Black Americans' relationship to agriculture has always been difficult. After the end of enslavement, further laws were enacted to make the ability to maintain land for Black people nearly impossible. And honestly, y'all, that still holds true today. I had a thread about, on Twitter, I had a thread about how the conversations around like the crypto and buy land and this is what Black folks need to do. And if we all just do this and if you got money, you should be doing this or whatever. I get that. But what gets lost in these conversations is the immense amount of privilege that you even have to even sit up on a Twitter, on Beyonce's internet and say these things. Like, do y'all know how many Black people still cannot read? Still cannot write? Cannot read and write their own names. Cannot read and write, period. Do not have access to the internet. Right? All of us can't just go invest our money into crypto, into NFTs, into whatever, and become millionaires and go buy land and live. That is, come on, y'all. Like, what I really do want to see more of is, okay, those of us who can do it, fine, let's do it. But then once we do it and achieve some sort of wealth, let's make that a communal wealth and let's start to rebuild communities instead of treating it like this is the effort of the individual. I'm tired of it. If Black people are now telling Black people to basically put their boots on the ground, pull themselves up by the bootstraps, it's on you, the individual, to better yourself. Listen, to an extent, it's on you as the individual, but I'm going to always bring it back to the systems that are put in place. I think sometimes, especially now with the access that we have and the education, the re-education that many of us are able to do on our own because of the access that we have, it is making us now want to downplay these systems. And we're getting really trapped in this individualistic belief systems that make us believe it is on the individual Black person to better themselves and build themselves up. And if you not a millionaire by 30, that's just on you. If you didn't do this by 40, that's just on you. If you have an iPhone, you should be able to make yourself tens of thousands of dollars. Please stop. Stop. Read some more books and understand why that does not hold true for every single one of us. I'm going to always blame the system first before I blame the individual Black person. Are y'all kidding me? Are you kidding me? You want us to play catch up to 500 years of people getting wealth off of our bodies? You want me to work 20, 30, 40 times harder to play catch up? I absolutely refuse. And if y'all think that sounds like I'm saying I feel like we should have things handed to us, you're right. I absolutely do believe that. Because are you kidding me? You want me to play catch up with 500 years of an entire people in a land gaining wealth off of the bodies of people that looked like me? I'm supposed to work harder than them to get 1/16 of a 16th of a 16th of wealth, maybe, in my lifetime? No. I don't think I should have to. I don't think you should have to either. Hustle culture is not cute. Having 3 jobs is not fun. People shouldn't have to do that. People, when they get on unemployment and say they get $10,000 in back unemployment, y'all are like, all right, now you should invest it and flip it. Some people have to feed their children first, have to pay their rent first, have to get a medical bill cleared so they can resume treatment for whatever they have. People cannot just always take their money, put it in something and flip it. I think the fact that we even think like that we even think I got to take $1 and turn it into 10 is a problem. And you see, I feel like as a community, I'm going off on a tangent here, whatever. I feel like we as a community even think like that. I got to take $5 and make it 50. Not because we're just like investors at heart and no, it's because you don't have enough and you don't trust capitalism and you're afraid. So you want to turn 5 into 50 because you don't know if 5 will be worth 5 tomorrow. That is a problem. So what do we need to do? Blame the systems, not the individual. Thank you. But back to this article, though. Black Americans' relationship to agriculture has always been difficult. At the end of enslavement, further laws were enacted to make the ability to maintain land for Black people nearly impossible. Today, out of over 2 million farmers, less than 2% of them are Black. There is an urgency for the preservation of Black farms that exists in the face of systemic racism. Black Americans' approach to agriculture has prioritized supporting one's community in both body and spirit, honoring the land for its yield and the urge for the return of land to the indigenous peoples it has been taken from. This radical approach can be illustrated in inspiring farms such as Soulfire Farm, located in Petersburg, New York, and Philly Urban Creators in Pennsylvania. Black pastoralism has provided hope in the midst of racial injustice, the possibility to exist in tranquility, cottagecore included. All takes of agricultural aesthetics must recognize the real issues that exist because cottagecore is an agricultural aesthetic, so that the groups that face marginalization can find that they not only deserve, but can pursue the opportunity to create a haven in the rural.